Hi, welcome to this episode of In Conversation with Industry Experts interview series. Hope you're staying healthy and safe. My name is Anirban Sen, and I'm the CEO of Fifth Throne, a firm that specializes in training and advisory in the space of mergers and acquisitions, business strategy, and digital innovation. This interview series is focused to create a deep understanding and awareness in the world of digital innovation. The world of supply chain, as many of you know, is a complex undertaking. We have several parties involved with multiple systems. We have exchange of information across the globe taking place these days. And that makes it extremely complex and challenging. In fact, some of the challenges that you see are related to lack of trust, data integrity and quality of data, and most importantly, getting information in real time. But now, with the advances that have been made in technology, especially with blockchain, with artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and big data, data analytics, we have now ability to create solutions that can easily address these issues. This is the topic for today, where we're going to talk about how digital innovation is changing the world of industry value chain. And to discuss about this, we have been joined today by one of the esteemed industry experts, Lakshmi Venkat, or LV, as we call him in short. So I would like to welcome you to the show, LV. LV.
Thank you for involving me in this interview episodes. I would like to share my experiences, and I would also like to share the different aspects of the application of blockchain for various industrial solutions or various data exchange solutions for industries.
Excellent. So since you're the expert already in this field and you've been working on this field for many years, why don't we start with some examples that you can share with our listeners?
Sure. So it has been 3 years, Anirvan, since I have become an evangelist on blockchain and the related technologies. One of the things that has really taken my interest is the ability to be able to share information across multiple organizations in near real time. So all the organizations ever since the advent of internet or even before that, they all wanted to share information in a secure way and in a transparent way. However, as I see it, the compute was expensive, the storage was expensive, the bandwidth was not very effective, and the cost of the transmission of data was very expensive. But now, if you see, we are in an era wherein all of these four pillars, where which will help in terms of near real-time communication, have become very affordable to the lowest of the lowest level of enterprises. That is where the enablement of the blockchain or the distributed ledger technology is helping in terms of organizations connect. Yes. So if you see the era of electronic data interchanging or EDI, or the way that we have known about 20 years, is an excellent example of the information snippets that get exchanged. But then it was the right, technology of choice at that time, wherein you need a secure method of transmission between multiple organizations, wherein there was a central party who arranges this mode of communication. But over a period of time, people have gotten used to the EDI, and now with the new technologies like distributed ledgers coming in, the opportunity is there for people to look at moving away from the technologies like EDI and then adopting the technologies like distributed ledger technology, and then the associated business rules execution, which sometimes we call it as smart contracts.
Very good. I think this is an excellent field and a very exciting field, and it's evolving very rapidly. You talked about blockchain. Typically, in a conversation, when do people start thinking about blockchain? What time is the right time to actually start talking about blockchain?
When people start realizing the importance of multi-party collaboration, okay, the enterprise resource planning systems of this world have definitely created simplicity and standardization of IT systems. About 15 years ago, we used to have 100 plus IT systems within an organization. Now ERPs have effectively replaced it over the next the last 10-15 years. So while ERPs look within an organization, when the organizations start looking at how do I effectively improve the business process between my partners, that is when the multi-party collaboration comes in. ERPs do offer the connectivity with the tier 1 supplier and tier 1 customer, but then they do not go beyond tier 1 supplier and tier 1 customer, right? And then there are all kinds of challenges in terms of licensing, and there are all kinds of challenges in terms of what does the the layer 2 share with the tier 1, and then what tier 1 shares with the ERP. It is always like there are gatekeepers, and the information gets masked, and then what gets to the OEM is always something like either a masked information or an information that is extrapolated, right? That is where organizations start looking at like when there is a need for a multi-party collaboration in a seamless way, wherein everybody can know that the same information is being consumed by rest of the parties. That is when the discussion about blockchain starts in an enterprise kind of a scenario. I'm not talking about cryptos here. I'm staying away from cryptos.
Very good, very good. Now, you mentioned about the starting point, what organizations, at what point in time the organizations need to start thinking for blockchain or on blockchain. What are some of the other things that they need to keep in mind? Because blockchain is a new technology which is there. Are there some of the other things that people need to keep in mind when?
So, like with any other IT project, Anirvan, the organization will have to look at like what is the benefit that is coming out of this project. However, if you look at the IT projects which are concerning a single organization, then it is the incentive and benefit to that organization. But in blockchain, you have to look at the multiple organizations. What is the incentive for the group of organizations that are joining a particular network, right? And then making all those organizations agree that this is what is important, and then this is the incentive for them to join. That is very, very key. When an organization is going on a blockchain related engagement, it is very key to understand all of these things.
Absolutely. I think that is very, very important. Now, one of my favorite questions, and we have spoken about this many a times. Why don't we do a bit of a compare and contrast with blockchain, with some of the other technologies that exist today?
Right. So when you look at organizations, a supplier is a supplier, a customer is a customer, right? So the way that the organizations think is that I will open up this supplier portal to my suppliers, and they will be able to transact on this portal. Excellent. Look from the supplier's perspective. They have 200 such customers. They have 200 such portals, right? So that means that literally the supplier side will have to have 200 different logins into 200 different supplier portals, which are provided by 200 customers. Similarly, you have the customer portals. So every customer will have to log in onto that portal, and then start looking at it. So the way that people have created is that multi to single point and single point to multi. That is the way it is. It is not peer to peer. It is centralized, right? And then the organization which is holding the centralized data either manipulates the data or loses the data. Then rest of the other participants have no way of recovering the data. And understand that it is their data as well. It is not only this particular organization's data, right? So there are issues like that, which prop up now, which come up now, and then these are some of the issues that blockchain would solve, because effectively every participant will have their own node, in the blockchain network, which means that they even if there are 200 suppliers and 200 customers participating in that, each of them will be polling to the same node, right? So the nodes replicate among themselves. So for any organization, it is only one view, it is only one entry, and then they have all the data that is relevant to them, whether it is their supplier data or their customer data. That is a huge advantage that blockchain brings in. Now, if their supplier systems are down, their customer systems are down, no worries at all, because they have their data, which is pertaining to their customer, their supplier, which would have been in their system as well. So that way, this this business network principle that we talk in blockchain helps a lot in terms of having a single window in terms of connecting to the rest of the world.
Very good. Thank you for that answer. It is always interesting. It is one of the most common questions that we get asked when we talk about blockchain solutions. Now, we also understand that when you implement a blockchain solution, that's not the only piece of technology that we look at. We probably are looking at some of the APIs, as you mentioned, some of the backend interfaces. So if you could throw some more light around that.
Great. Like if you see the adoption of blockchain, right? Blockchain as a technology is enabling the communication or collaboration between multiple parties, which means that there are always upstream systems and downstream systems which have to consume information. Okay, so it's like your SAP, Oracle ERP, or any other ERP, which could be the upstream system. And then on the downstream, you have some other system which is consuming the same information. What blockchain is adding value here is that blockchain gives you that transportation layer or the data persistence layer, either as an event or as a data snippet itself, if you want it to be, right? So the blockchain ensures that the information exchange is notarized, and the information exchange will be able to prove that this particular information has been exchanged with this organization at so and so time, and with auditability, right? Now the second aspect of this one is, yes, APIs are very, very important, which are exposed by some of the major ERP providers and some of the cloud ERP providers as well. So all those APIs can be integrated with the blockchain technologies, and you call it the smart contracts or you call it the chain codes, will be able to consume the information snippets coming from these APIs, and then we'll be able to record a state of a particular asset or record a particular state of a particular document in the blockchain, which can be there in an immutable way. So this is the way that people are looking at utilizing the blockchain technology to start with. And then the way the blockchain technology helps is, first, with any other system implementations, you need to first build a backbone. Unless you build the backbone, unless you build your basic network, the organizations will not be able to see the benefit of adding bells and whistles to the basic network. So the basic network always is the asset state maintenance, and the asset movement and the asset state maintenance, which we call it as track and trace, particularly in the supply chain industry. That is the basic backbone that needs to be implemented.
And I think we probably, one of your solutions that we have talked about in the past also uses some form of IoT and some form of mobile phone interface. Can you also throw a bit of light on there? Because IoT is a new phenomena that is reshaping the world. How did you go about creating that part of the solution?
Yes. So as I was mentioning, right? So track and trace is one great example of asset state maintenance and the asset handovers over the business network. But now, if you look at some of the applications like cold chain tracking, some of the applications wherein the devices send the information and transmit the information, like IoT devices. So more often than not, the IoT devices, pull information, a time series information, or some kind of an information to a centralized database in today's world. Now, if it is the outlier that the IoT device has thrown, right, and that outlier information is either archived or is either deleted from that centralized database, you will never be able to find that outlier anywhere in the system unless a huge amount of effort goes in terms of enabling the audit histories and then figuring out what happened. What is the cost of that audit? Cost compared to cost of the information loss, right? People often, forget about cost of performance of a certain action versus the value of outcome, right? That is something that we always educate and advocate when we talk to our prospects and customers, like, yes, great, you're doing a certain action, you're doing a certain process at a certain value today, but then do you have an opportunity to reduce the cost by looking at utilizing the blockchain kind of technologies, because they provide the security at a persistence layer, they provide the event notarization layer, and they also provide the ability for the state maintenance of a particular transaction, right? So when you talk about IoT, very, very important, it is okay if you don't capture the basic information that is coming from IoT, the information which is between your upper specification limit and lower specification limit, but you have to capture the outliers. If you have to capture the outliers in an auditable way, that event, the blockchain is the best solution to be able to do that.
And I think you've already highlighted a good few points regarding the advantages of blockchain. Now let's move towards the industry value chain, the supply chain. You mentioned about track and trace. What makes blockchain-based solutions so attractive for industry value chain and supply chain?
You take the same examples, right? Industry always wanted the information. So if you look at the FMCG industry, the manufacturer of a particular snack or a particular candy melt, or the manufacturer of a particular let us say bakery product, to that example, would always want to know that what is the experience of the end customer upon usage of this. But now traditionally, either because of lack of systems, either because of the way that the finances have to be flowing between different parties, you have so many intermediaries that come into picture. You have the stockists, you have the wholesalers, you have the distributors, and then you have the multi-brand retailers, and then you have the mom and pop stores, right? So as the product moves through these hands, the actual manufacturer does lose sight of the particular product. Where is that particular product, and then so what organizations have done is they have gone ahead and then created the customer engagement solutions, in terms of you create a condiment, you put a barcode on it, and then you ask a customer scan the barcode and then give you a feedback. Great, but then you never know whether that particular customer has bought that product, or it is a paid review that you're getting it. There is no way that you're going to know that, right? So these are some of the issues that the industrial supply chains or value chains have. Always it's great to have that kind of a visibility to be able to plan better, right? And if you ask me today again, the manufacturers do get visibility and information by zip code, but 90% of the time I believe that that information is extrapolated, statistical, based on historical facts, and based upon the supposed demand that is provided by certain salespeople, or the certain managers, right? There is never a way that organizations know that this zip code is not doing well, or this particular area is not doing well, and then I have to increase my marketing budget in that area to be able to get my products out better. Now, while that is for the FMCG industry, you look at the industry wherein there are perishable consumables like milk, right? Again, if you look at the milk industry as well, both on the supply side and demand side, the core product changes so many hands, and then go through so much of transformation by the time it gets to the end customer, right? Is there any way the end customer today knows whether that milk that they are using is a milk made out of powder, or is it the milk that is fresh? No way. No company tells you that this is a milk that is made from powder, right? It's just a milk. I'm not challenging whether it is a good practice or bad practice. I'm just saying that the end customer has the right to know whether that milk that they are drinking is a milk that is coming out of a powder, or is it the milk that was originally coming from the cow, or the animal, and then it is transported, and then it is delivered to them, right? So These are some of the peculiar things that that the industry is looking at. Extrapolated to the organic products, you and I, we know how complex the organic industry is. Everywhere you need certifications, right? Why all of these intermediaries have to come in? Because these intermediaries provide trust to the end customer, right? But now what blockchain is doing is, if you're able to maintain the asset state, if you're able to maintain the state of a particular transaction, if you're able to maintain the state of a particular field, right? You don't need these intermediaries. Or, okay, these intermediaries can be there, but, they can just look the data from the blockchain or the events from the blockchain, and then they'll be able to certify on the blockchain. So that, you are able to slowly move away from the intermediaries, and then, you're able to look at a system wherein, like, the consumables can be verified, right? While this is the state you look at, then you look at e-commerce kind of solutions. Forward logistics, heavily optimized. Reverse logistics, not so optimized at all, right? Even today, if you see, you buy something from an online portal, you return it, it takes almost 2 working days to 7 working days to get your money back into your credit card, right? With so much of technology around, why does it have to take 7 days? Because the intermediaries have to do reconciliation after reconciliation after reconciliation. For a $10 refund that needs to come to you, they probably spend $2. Do they need to spend? Do you have to wait? The 2 questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and the point that you highlighted about the reverse logistics and the lack of preparation there. As you have experienced in the previous few implementations of blockchain solution, it involves multiple parties. It involves multiple companies. Um, how would people go about mobilizing different parties involved? Do you need an anchor client, or do you need a consortium? How do you go about creating something like that?
Good question. I probably would like to answer it in 2 parts. So the first part, right? The from 2018 to mid 2019, that's like almost 18 months, I would say. Most of our advocacy with the prospects or with the organizations is like, blockchain is not crypto. Okay, you're not committing a sin by uttering the word blockchain in your organization. That is what we had to literally tell people. Blockchain is something where you could use, where you see the effect of multi-party collaboration, where you see the effect of the ability to interact with your peers in a seamless way, where you don't have to depend upon somebody whom you trust to be able to pass the information between 2 different organizations or 2 different parties. But since mid 2019, I think most of the organizations have understood. The industry has woken up in terms of the possibility of utilizing blockchain solutions. So when it comes to the blockchain solutions that are involving the organizations, I think it is always good to have one anchor customer or one pivot, I would say, because it's like this, right? So out of a particular solution, who is the biggest beneficiary? The biggest beneficiary should be the anchor customer. The biggest beneficiary should be able to say that I'm going to get X amount of millions of dollars of benefit in about 5 years from now. And then for this to happen, I need to involve my partner ecosystem, right? And then that anchor client is the one who has to initially invest in this technology, and then who has to show the results to their partners, having at least 1 or 2 partners participate in the POC, and then show it to them, and then to the rest of the ecosystem that this is the benefit of using this. So that is the reason, Anirvan, if you see, the era between 2018 or 2017, 2018, 2019 is all about proof of concepts. It's all about proof of concepts. There are some excellent proof of concepts, which people have taken to the next levels now, productionizing the solutions. There are certain proof of concepts remained in the stage of proof of concepts because when the proof of concept was, I would say, defined, the outcome, the expected outcome was something like, an outcome which could have been like, 2 years after, which they were expecting, within the 3 months or 4 months of, the proof of concept. So there were also, that kind of pitfalls in terms of, planning, and then in terms of looking at, what is the end result and the outcome, right? So always it is important to understand that, yes, consortiums are good, but I have reservations about consortiums, Anirvan, compared to, having an anchor client, because consortium means you are giving the decision making power to multiple organizations, and then, nominees from multiple organizations. Nominees from multiple organizations may not have a common goal. They appear to be having a common goal, but they may not have a common goal, right? And trust me, believe me, they are still employees. So they are guided by certain KPIs that they are set by their organizations. They are not guided by the KPIs and common goals that are set by the consortium. If the consortiums pay these people who are nominated from the companies, then consortiums will win. As long as, the people who are part of the consortiums are paid by this respective employers, they are like, weekend parties.
Very important point. I think you've highlighted one of the most critical elements when it comes to working with multiple companies. And in fact, that is a nice segue to my next question as well. There's a lot of data that gets generated and is involved, exchanged. And as you know, that last few years, governments and organizations worldwide have started emphasizing on the data privacy and how the data should be collected, how the data should be stored, who has access. How does that feature and compare and contrast with the blockchain solution where we have multiple parties? Who owns the data? How is it information exchanged? Where should it be stored? That kind of thing.
Good question, right? I would still say the same question exists for the traditional systems as well, right? Today, as part of issuing a purchase order, an organization provides the information related to price and related to the other information to the other organization, right? So this information exists in the source as well as the destination. It does, right? So the data ownership is very, very clearly defined, that whatever is the data that is at the source, even if it is related to the third parties, I mean the supplier or the customer, that is still owned by the source. But is that correct? I don't know, right? The same thing goes on the other side as well. But when it comes to blockchain, what we try to do is that we will have, when these kind of questions come up, right, you can exchange the information. We will use the blockchain layer as an event notarization layer, and we will only have the transaction hash, and we will only have the reference of that particular transaction. Call it as a primary key, in the world that we know, that, the primary key related to the transaction in the transaction hash, right? That is good enough to be stored on the blockchain. When that data privacy, becomes the most important question in terms of, consortium. But still, the blockchains will help, because you would still be able to, look at this information as events. This is the event that is occurred, and then with the primary key, you will be able to trace it back into the source system, that this is the primary key, this is what is the data. You take the data from there, and then you hash it using the same algorithm, and compare it with the blockchain hash. If it is different, there is data manipulation. Mm-hmm. If it is the same, then the data is not manipulated. Mm-hmm. Right? How hard is it in current world to be able to establish that fact? It is very, very difficult, because you need to do a lot of analysis in terms of arriving at a point whether the data manipulation happened or not, right? So that is the way that you have to look at. There are other ways of implementation wherein, like, the blockchain, when they are persisting the data, can have the entire data encrypted, and can also say that this is the information that can be seen by party A, this is the information that can be seen by party B, this is the information that can be seen by party C. All that is possible. But then what we are doing is, within the blockchain, we are getting into the information segregation and the information security policies, which is, I would say, the second level or third level of blockchain implementations that people should look.
Very good. I think, yeah. In fact, as we evolve in the blockchain space, being used in the non-crypto world, this is going to become more and more evident, and more cases where we will get more clarity as we discover through this journey. Since blockchain is comparatively new technology, and as you said, not a lot of companies have gone through the solutioning stage. What are some of the typical challenges that organizations or people face when they try to implement a blockchain solution?
The first question that they get asked is that why not the traditional way? The biggest challenge that they need to answer. And the biggest challenge that they need to also showcase is that, what is the time to market if you use the traditional technology versus the time to market if you use the blockchain. What is the value or what is the cost of doing a certain transaction in traditional technology compared to, blockchain? So these are the ones, that they need to look at. The second most important challenge that, people or organizations have to deal with is that, which blockchain to choose. Okay. So there is enough confusion already in the market in terms of, which blockchains to use. The first, it starts with like, whether they should go for a public blockchain or a private blockchain. Then, then the discussion starts in terms of, whether they should go towards, flavor A or flavor B, flavor C or flavor D, right? Then, they need to, then I'm not naming companies here, right? So then, then, they'll have to look at like, what is the advantages and disadvantages of all of these things. And then they need to look at, who is the SI partner, who can do this. And then they need to go to the consortium or, they need to go to the rest of the companies and say, hey, this is what we do, please adopt this. Then the companies would come back and say, what? For some other customer, we are already using A and we already built everything for that. Why don't you use this? Now that A may not be the choice of this particular anchor customer, right? So these are the ones, that go through. So it's more of a dialogue that, the anchor customer need to have with their identified partners, the key partners, in terms of looking at, this is what I'm looking at, involve them in terms of like, the decision making process, because the decision is being taken for a ecosystem, not for a single organization, right? And then make sure that, everybody is on the same page. The second biggest challenge that the organizations face is in terms of who certifies security for this. Okay, it's a nightmare to get the security testing completed within one organization. Imagine you multiply it by 4 times or 5 times or 6 times, right? Every organization have their own set of security policies, and then they might be using the same third party security certification agency, but still every organization need to get a certificate from them that what you're using is the valid thing, right? So it's the same thing, right? They have to go through these multiple processes. And then the utmost important thing, achieving all of these things are trivial compared to the last one, which I'm going to say, is that what is the use case? The biggest challenge is like, what is the use case that they need to look at, because everything looks great on paper, but unless, like the way we used to do in our olden days, in terms of this is what is the benefit, but is the benefit I mean in terms of benefit versus cost of implementation, benefit versus cost of maintenance, benefit versus incentive to the partner organizations, all of these things will have to be looked at. That is the biggest challenge that organizations go through. That is the biggest reason why most of the organizations fail at POCs.
Very important. I think you've highlighted one of the crux of whether you're going to have a successful implementation of blockchain or not, which is to get an agreement on what the use case is and why should the different parties be involved together. Based on your expertise and your experience, and you've been pioneers of implementing blockchain solution in industrial setup. What do you think is in the future? What's the future going to look like?
The future is going to look like, again, I'll answer in 2 parts, right? From a technology perspective, there are many different flavors today. They are going to settle down because some of them are going to run out of steam, some of them are going to run out of funding. The ones which have persisted and then which have done a good amount of POCs with customers, will exist. Most of them will, the rest of them will perish. So that is, there is going to be consolidation in terms of, technology. And in terms of business networks, it will be, there will be quite a number of business networks, Anirvan, but then there will also be interoperability between business networks. a big amount of community is working on, creating interoperability between different blockchain solutions. That is very, very key. And if that interoperability becomes, a kind of a affordable solution, then I'm sure, blockchain will become mainstream, and then, people will start looking at adopting it.
Yeah. Very good. I guess we are now sort of getting towards the closure of the interview. One last question for you with respect to our viewers. What are some of the practical tips that you would like to share with our viewers?
Assuming the viewers are going to be techno-functional or commercial as well as technical, I would say the first and most important point to remember is that when you're looking at multi-party collaboration solutions, which involves different kinds of organizations in a particular workflow, look at blockchain as one of the fitments. Then second thing, pick up a use case which is simple enough, yet there is an impact in terms of the outcome. So it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be $1 million kind of an outcome every time. But then even if you're looking at a particular reconciliation of a particular process, which they used to take 6 hours to 24 hours, if you can make it near real time, that is a great benefit that you could start with. And then apply it with multiple organizations which are involved in the reconciliation. Then you're creating a ripple effect across the organizations. You're freeing them of that kind of a job, which is which may be non-value adding now over a period of time, given the technology can do that, right? So these are the ones that I normally would say in terms of look at channelizing the energies in terms of identifying a simpler use case with greater value.
Very good, very good. Thank you, LV. LV, you are indeed one of those guys who have got so much of wealth of experience and expertise in this specific field. I'm sure many of the viewers would like to sort of continue this dialogue and speak to you. What's the best way to get in touch? Is that LinkedIn, email, or something else?
LinkedIn and email, both are the best way to communicate. Email is always the faster option, I would say, for me to be able to respond. LinkedIn, some days I might not be looking at it, so there could be a lesser response. So yes, email and then LinkedIn if you ask me.
Very good. So I guess for the viewers, we will be sharing the LinkedIn profile as well as LV's email ID. So if you want to get in touch with him and continue this dialogue, you can speak to him directly, or you can always contact us, and we will be more than happy to connect you with LV. With that, we would like to bring closure to this interview. So before we do that, thanks a lot again, LV. As usual, you've been a wonderful interviewee, and you've shared so much of experience and information with us. I'm sure our viewers are going to get very benefited from the interaction here. So thank you, LV.
Thank you, Anirban. Always a pleasure talking to you. I think it is the interviewer who gets the gist out of the interviewee. That is what I believe. So credit goes to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So this was Conversation with Industry Experts interview, and the topic today was digital innovation in the space of industry value chain. If you found value from this interview series, and if you would like to hear more, then please let us know, but also share it with your network and friends and colleagues. And last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.